Today, I've got the great honor to welcome my special guest today, Dion Chang. Dion is one of South Africa's leading futurists, trend analysis, and what we often describe as a professional cage rattler, someone who challenges conventional thinking and pushes us to see the world differently. Through his work, he has helped organizations, leaders, and societies to make sense of uncertainty, change, and the complex forces that shapes our future. Dion, it's a major honor. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you. The honor's mine. Thanks for inviting me.
So, Dion, I want to start off with this opening question. You are often described as a professional cage rattler. What does this mean to you, and how did your journey begin into trend analysis?
Okay, so the cage rattling, let me answer that first, is I think because I'm I'm able to kind of put things that are futuristic in such a way where it's just understandable and reachable. So I think a lot of futurists might speak a little bit too far ahead. So when people don't see it as part of their reality, they don't really kind of absorb it or process it. I think I have the ability to bring it a little bit closer to home and put it into very, very real terms. And I've got my years of writing for magazines and things to thank for that. So I can kind of put things into perspective for people. But that said, that also does make people very scared. So I do rattle cages, and that's the point of all of my presentations and trend briefings that I give, is that it's meant to make you feel a little bit rattled and make you feel a little bit uneasy, but it's also to prepare you for the change. So a lot of the clients that come to me say they want to, specifically for their staff, they want to really, really impress on them how close and how quick the change is going to be. So that's my job when I do a lot of public speaking to push that point. How did it start? Well, yeah. So I mean, I've been going through different careers. We can get onto this one, but the sort of the end of life doula is the latest one, but that's about my fourth switch when I switch lanes or transitions in life. And this one with Flux Trends is the company I started 20 years ago. And I always jokingly say to people, I started a trends company before trends were trendy. And people didn't quite understand what we were doing 20 years ago. But now everybody kind of tracks trends and does that. But it was coming out of the fashion and magazine industry. And that's when I decided to start up my own business. And even 20 years ago, I started it as a information distillation service, because even 20 years ago, I thought there was just way too much information. I mean, it's like quadrupled over and over again. But even then, I thought we needed a service where you could just make sense of all of the chaos that was happening.
Thank you for that, for describing that question in such humanity and being honest, because you know what I find specifically is understanding the future, especially in a world that's growing with a lot of uncertainty. And based on what you see, what are the most important global shifts people should be paying attention to right now?
So the obvious one is AI. So the last 3 years has been what in the 20 years I've been tracking technology, different changes of trends. Basically, what we do at Flux is we track anything that disrupts a business. So when we started looking at AI, and 3 years ago when they launched ChatGPT 3, it just things started feeling very, very, very different, and it has just changed exponentially. So that's going to be one of the big revolutions, because it will take, no matter what people say about it, it will take jobs away. It will remove entry-level jobs. It will change the nature of work. It'll change industries. It'll change sectors. That said, so that's a big one because it's got a ripple effect in everything. So it's specifically education, which was in need of a refresh anyway. But the way in which people work, all of that is going to have a major fundamental shift and an existential crisis basically for all businesses because it is going to be that big. And we're only seeing the tip of the iceberg at the moment. On a more human level, I think the faster we move with technology, the more we are losing a sense of humanity. And you can see it with parents that are worried about their kids. So we do very long generational studies. When we started looking at Generation Z, we started looking at them when they were just teenagers, and we've tracked Gen Z for 15 years already. We are already 4 years into Generation Alpha. So these are the children of the millennials. If the Gen Zs are the first digital natives of humanity, then Gen Alphas are we call them the generation that's going to weaponize AI. So for the listeners or the viewers, is your Gen Alphas are the oldest are 14 and under, and your Gen Zs are the oldest are in their 30s already. They were born kind of the first ones in the sort of 1980s or so. So you see two generations which have been kind of plunged into first, from their first breath into technology, Gen Alpha even more so. And we are starting to see the impact of what that technology does, what social media does, the loneliness pandemic, the kind of the loss of critical thinking with AI, specifically with AI dependency, and just the kind of the human disconnect. And it's becoming very apparent that socio-culturally is going to change the way in which we engage with each other, and all of that. And you can see it even on a bigger scale with geopolitics, the influence of social media and the disinformation that can be pushed through social media because we are all kind of glued to our phones. It's very easy to reach people individually, whereas before you wouldn't be able to do that. Now you can manipulate people's thinking in a much easier way, and you can also feed them disinformation in a far easier way as well. So we're really on a crux of a big evolution. And what AI, to put it all together, is what AI is going to do is really just push that really fast, and make sure that's kind of goes into seeps in everywhere, and especially the more digitally dependent your younger generations are, the easier it's going to become to be immersed in that kind of world.
Dion, you said something very important about the future, and I can see it in the field of academia, but also in the field of neurodiversity, where things are rapidly changing, not only on social media, when you look particularly at how social media played a major role, in advocacy. And in terms of AI, um, I want to ask your opinion surrounding that in terms of the how accessible it can be towards disabled people. Because I want to give you a personal example. My wife Sammy, like I mentioned of she's a semi verbal autistic dyslexic, and I got this AI glasses, this Meta AI glasses, which was imported thanks to the the Ray-Ban company, and Mark Zuckerberg's company as well. And we basically got this AR glasses, which makes society more accessible for her because she can't read and write. And when she got these AR glasses, she can basically make the world around her accessible. She was, for the first time when she got these glasses, she could basically read a menu, with these glasses. And I've been doing a lot of research, and unfortunately, here in South Africa, it's not accessible yet here. because I phoned Ray-Ban and Meta, and they mentioned that they don't see a market there, and the government also mentioned that this will potentially increase the crime rate of South Africa because it's got cameras as well,
Yeah.
and you will not know if someone can record you automatically or process the information without you knowing. So, what is your opinion on that?
Yeah, so I mean, we've been following um, specifically with those glasses, the kind of category of augmented realities as well. And I think we at such a sort of a turning point or a fork in the road or a T junction, if you want, with AI and with technology, is that it can do a lot of good, but there's a flip side to it. So we haven't explored the double-edged sword nature of the technology, because what you're starting to find is there's huge, specifically in the medical field, AI is just, transforming diagnostics, the time of how you diagnose things. It sometimes diagnose things better and faster than a doctor would be able to do it. Hence the whole kind of function of what a doctor is, what a surgeon is will change. But at the same time, just to illustrate the kind of the double-edged sword of it, we also tracking now that there's a war, there's two wars going on in the world, big ones in the world that everyone's focused on, is that the use of AI within that in a military context is, and it's a very chilling phrase that they use, that it shortens the kill time. So whereas before you would have to kind of look at reconnaissance reports and this, and then you make a decision, and everyone sits around a table and say, okay, we'll bomb this place on this date, whatever. You now with AI, same with the good that it does with in the medical field, it shortens that kill chain, and it can just make decisions really, really quickly. And if it's fed the wrong information, very much like one of those first American bombs that hit a school because it was an old GPS, it was an old Google Maps data, then you've got things that go horribly wrong. So I think there's good and bad, but we haven't really seen where we are yet, which is kind of what makes it a bit frightening at the moment, is because we don't really know which way it's going to go. We know the incredible good, but we're also seeing the incredible bad, and it's up to humanity and whoever, and this is where I get a bit more depressed, is up to the 5 or so tech companies that are going to be the gatekeepers for the rest of the planet for this kind of technology. So that's a bit scary for me.
It's totally a different world compared to 20, 30 years ago. And I've been listening to a podcast the other day where the godfather of AI basically mentioned um, the fear that people have, and the most dangerous people are, quite frankly, people that are basically in front of their computers, basically, in their pajamas sitting, because they can control the world without us knowing
Yeah,
it.
no, exactly. So, I mean, just last night on the news, there was a report on the BBC about a campaign in Russia that is trying to get exactly the people that you're talking about, young digital natives who are sitting in front of their computers and are gaming. They want to bring them into the army and enlist them, and yeah, and reward them for tech knowledge. So yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Let's go from computers, from IR to human behavior. You focus a lot on human behavior. What is the biggest changes you are seeing in how people think, connect, and also make decisions?
So this might be a bit of an unusual response to you, but I'm the big thing, and this is with I'm putting on different hats now. So my role as a transition guide, I'm starting to see people really question their the traditional pathways and the markers of success and where you go in life. So if that's the starting point, if you look at the trickle down, then it then answers your question a little bit more accurately about how people make decisions, what they do. But there's a fundamental shift that I'm really picking up of, and you see it with the Gen Z workforce. So there's a big frustration with millennials or Gen Xers who are the managers and the senior leaders now that just can't deal with this younger generation because they don't have the, let's say, the corporate commitment. I'll put that in inverted commas. They don't want to give it their all of those kind of things. But I'm a big advocate for Gen Zs, and I'm saying, but they actually maybe are teaching us a lesson about boundaries and actually having a bit of a balance within life. There's more to life than just slogging away and giving your entire soul to a company and all of your time, and then what? So you've seen the a boomer generation that's kind of the last ones are that are left in the workforce. They've left. But when I trained as a doula, one of the most surprising things that I and sad things that I picked up was in a report. One of the big insurance companies in South Africa said that that generation specifically fear retirement more than they fear death. And I think that's very sad that you don't fear death, but you fear retirement because your whole persona is taken away from you when you retire, and you've given your entire mind, body, soul to your work, and that's what defines you. And then if that's taken away from you, you have nothing left. I think that's a very, very sad indictment of the kind of corporate culture that we've all been fed, and to say this is what marks the trajectory of success. And if you do X, Y, and Z, you tick the boxes and you are successful. What I'm seeing at the moment is not only a Gen Z who has very different boundaries. We did a survey before the last government elections there, and it was a really interesting one where you kind of saw, we call it fragmented personalities, where they said, I've got a persona on Facebook, I've got a persona on Instagram, your kind of social media personas. But when you translate that in life, when we started analyzing it and connecting the dots, it made a huge sense that why your Gen Z workforce will say, okay, it's 5 o'clock, I'm gone, I'm not staying late. And your manager was like, but no, you got to work late and you got to, kind of, they're like, no, sorry, I've got a life and now I need to separate those kind of things. That kind of seed of breaking the mold of what we've been fed all along is like, this is what makes you happy, is being challenged. And so the other work that I do, and the book I've just written about the booming pet economy, which sounds kind of, if you read it and see the cover, it looks a bit frivolous, but it's not, because it's actually based in a lot on stats, and it incorporates demographics, because we track aging populations, declining birth rates around the world. Africa is very different. Africa is a very young continent, so there's a lot of youth, and we're still making a lot of babies. But everywhere else in the world, the birth rates are declining, and people are not wanting to. It's called a child-free movement, not a childless movement. It's not that you can't have kids, but you do not want to bring kids into a world that looks like it's just burning and spiraling out of control, and all of the money, emotions, and care is being put into pets. So the pet economy is kind of booming, and that's a big fundamental shift, because you've got a generation, specifically younger generations, younger millennials, Gen Zs, are actually saying, you know what, I'm not going to have kids as well. And their parents are going, but you have to, because that's what you do. You get married, you find a wife, or now you find a husband, then you have kids, and then you grow old together, and that's how it happens. All of that is now shaking up. So there's a really big shakeup of what people consider nuclear family, and within that is a whole look at what makes you happy, how you work, and specifically the work thing. It's not unusual. Well, you look at myself for a case study. Is I'm onto my fourth career at the moment. So you change, but it's just that I think before this moment in time is that a lot of people have not had the courage to change lanes and step out of it because we've been kind of told this is what you do, you work and you have kids, you get a family, and then you die. That's it. I think there's more to life than that.
Yeah, and also I think the old traditional way was basically you've got a 9 to 5 job. Um, you basically your 9 to 5 job and you retire now at the age of 60, but it's not the case anymore. You
No, I
know,
mean, I talk a lot about life's third age, and life's third age is 60 to 90 because now people living, somebody, a granny, a grandpa turning 90 is not that unusual anymore. 10 years ago it was. Turning 100 now is a bit more unusual, but turning 90 is kind of like people turning 80, a decade or two ago. So suddenly your and that's another illustration. So your corporate template to say that people must retire at 60 or 65, the banks are specifically nasty about that. Once you're 60, it's out, they get rid of you. But then what do you do now when your life expectancy is not the same as what a corporate model is, and you've got another 20 years of good cognitive ability, good physical ability? What the hell do you do? So that's why I decided to look into assisting people with these kind of transitions, and looking at. And while I thought I was going to be dealing mostly with executives who are reaching this retirement and helping them with rewirement, which is what I prefer saying, is I'm starting to see I am guiding a lot of a younger demographic, younger being professional, specifically women in their 40s or 50s, who are also reaching a point saying, I don't know why I'm doing this. And they're at the top of their game as well. So that's why I'm saying earlier on that there's this kind of undercurrent of an existential crisis that society's going through, and saying there must be more than this, than just work, 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 work. So yeah, so there's that, and AI together is going to make big, big, big changes coming ahead.
tell me, and this is just my neurodiverse brain working. Um, are people getting older in this kind of generation? Are people getting older, or are they, or is the life expectancy younger?
I think um, we're getting we're getting older, but we're staying younger. If that's an answer to your question. Healthcare is better, exercise is better. People are looking after what they eat and what they put in. So just generally, you are getting a better lifestyle because of medical science, but of also the foods you eat, and depending on the personality, if you want to exercise, if you are the person that exercises or watches what you eat, then our life expectancies are extending. And that's why I'm saying people are growing older, but they're staying younger because the markings of old age are starting to kind of fall away. Because if you have access, obviously, to good healthcare and good food and nutrition, then it is. But obviously, if you live below the poverty line, that option is kind of diminished for you.
Coming back to your focus on human behavior and society, as a society in general, based on your opinion, are we becoming more connected or disconnected as a society?
We, yeah, that's a difficult one because we're obviously more connected, but in an emotional sense, we are becoming less connected. So that sounds like a contradiction, but because of our phones, because of smartphones, and because of all of that, we are able to connect quicker and faster and easier. So in some respects, social media, you know, if you're on, say, like Facebook, which is an older demographic, you connect with people that you were in school with, or maybe you didn't want to connect with, and you connected anyway. Um, but that said, it's a superficial kind of connection. So I wrote an article about, gosh, about a year ago or even more, about people sending each other reels from Instagram as a new way of telling people that you're thinking about them. Now it's common practice. Is it's like it's another inbox on your phone, is to see who sends who, and it is good because you're creating another level of connectedness with some of your friends, not all of your friends, but the people that you share your reels with, because you think, oh, okay, I think Emil will like this, and I think it'll be funny, and I know it's your sense of humor, so I'll send you this reel. So it means that you are thinking of that person, but you're not sitting down in front of them or having a conversation about them. So you're connecting, but it's not a deep connection that will grow your friendship or your relationship. So yeah.
Yeah, very interesting, and especially how society is moving on. In my field, look, when you think about neurodiversity in general, and especially innovation, many of the world's most innovative thinkers are neurodivergent themselves. Hugo mentioned those names throughout history and even currently. How do you see, but just based on your experience, how do you see neurodivergence shaping the future of work creativity and leadership? And do you think, coming back to it, do you think the world is ready to move from simply accepting difference to truly valuing it?
I think we heading there quite quickly as well, and I agree with you. So people that are neurodivergent, um, obviously think differently. The minds are programmed. Your um, the neural passages are different. And like you say, history has shown that that's the big innovators are neurodivergent because they look at the world in a different way. And I think it's important at this moment in history because with cell phones, with all of the kind of the digital lives that we lead, it actually funnels you. The algorithms are, whether people like it or not, we are being pushed by the algorithms, and the algorithms decide what comes onto your social media feeds. It's all of the stuff that your devices are listening to you, and you will that'll suggest things when you're shopping online. All of those kind of things is we are being herded like sheep, into very very convenient boxes to do that. And I think neurodiversity is going to be more valued and more prized because it'll be a different way of somebody thinking and looking at things, and finding different solutions for it. So I think that's why I say if I go right to the beginning of what I started with, is that we kind of on the crux of a very big change, in terms of humanity, technology, and I don't say that lightly, but I do feel that there's a lot of undercurrents that are starting to chip away at the foundations we've all stood on for a long time, and that we've kind of learned from, but it's starting to, yeah, the foundations are feeling a little bit shaky now, and you can see it, geopolitically, the whole world order is a little bit shaky. All of these things, if you have the luxury as I do to kind of track this 24/7 all the time, you can see those changes are happening, whether it's the world of work, whether it's geopolitics, whether it's the environment, good and bad. In all of those, there's a massive change that's already underway.
Very interesting. From your perspective, how does Africa shape into the global future? Are we catching up? Are we creating something different?
I think we've it's been proven over and over again that because Africa didn't have, so in certain companies, just say mobile banking, we we in Africa, a lot of things get leapfrogged because you didn't have those resources to start with. So mobile banking, all of that, Africa leads the way because we didn't have the infrastructure of landlines like the rest of the world. So we went straight into mobile. our banking went straight into our mobile phones, and you had things like M-Pesa, all of those kind of things that really shocked the world, and people didn't expect that. And I do think, on the one hand, we're catching up, but on the other hand, we have the ability and the opportunity now to leapfrog. So, even if you look at it, and sorry, I keep going back because that's how my flux brain works, is even if you look at geopolitics, Africa's now like stepping into, while everybody else fights in the in the global north, the global south is starting to emerge with different ideas, different solutions, and different options. And I think because Africa has always not had the opportunity or the funding that the global north has had, you find a different way to do things. And I think those innovations will really, really leapfrog. And because demographically it's a very young continent, you will be able to see those things. The only things that I want to put a damper on this, is repressive governments or regimes within Africa as well. So patriarchal, homophobic, all of those kind of things is going to stunt the way forward and the innovation you have. So we need to get rid of that kind of thinking, and some very entrenched old mindsets. I mean, you've got dictators that have been there for, just north of our borders, how many 40 years or 50 years, in power. You can't have that anymore. And once we change that, it'll start releasing that good energy that we've got from the continent.
Interesting question to you. What opportunities are there in the global south that the global north or might be overlooking?
I think there is. I mean, I'm using a South African word now, but about Ubuntu, but kind of working together to find solutions to be able to do that. I think, going back to my whole analogy that something's shaking the foundations, I think everybody is looking at the kind of 20th century capitalist model that the world's been running on, and it has caused, and we can see it now, that's another juncture that we are at, is this immense inequality that is just, the 1% have now become the 0.5% of just like obscene wealth, and that the middle, we call it the middle class mirage, is starting to fade away and starting to slip down, and there's just this separation, and it's because of the way in which all of the businesses are run, about sort of profit at all costs, bugger the environment, workers' rights, all of those kind of things. Those chickens are coming home to roost now, in my opinion. And I think what Africa or the global south can bring forward is a different way of maybe kind of doing business, but we have to unlearn a lot of what we've learned through the last 100 years or so, of lifetimes. But I do think that the global south, culturally and just economically, operate on a very, very different level. And I think once that kind of becomes more formalized, we'll see big changes in how the global south emerges from that.
Yeah, Dion, thank you for that. I want to ask you something, and it's just a random question that came up, but I think it's still relevant when you consider everything that's been going around us, and I've been grappling with this for a long time. And I'm thinking about the sustainability of mainstream media, and if you think about the reliability of it, because I've seen that if you look specifically at the US elections that happened 2 years ago, and with the strength that we're currently experiencing, people are talking about X as truth media. When you look particularly at, I see a lot of people are using now listening to podcasts and are writing articles now from podcasts. I picked it up, whether it's in sport, politics, people are writing articles about it. Do you think, based on your personal opinion, the trends that you saw when you consider social media, X, and where we're currently at in the world, do you think mainstream media is reliable?
I do, yes, I do. I do still think that your mainstream, look, there is still going to be bias, so it's a difficult question to answer, but I think completely unfettered information sources, like just getting all of your news from social media, because of the way it can be manipulated, there are far fewer checks and balances than, say, larger traditional media, so bigger media houses. And that said, is there will be a bias in traditional media to more left, more right leaning, but I think that's of a lesser evil because you pick that kind of media that you want. So just in an American sense, Fox News versus CNN. So you will watch that kind of news, for it. But I think even though there's a bias within those big media houses, it's less of a danger than people verbatim believing what they see on X and specifically with AI now, because you cannot make a call whether this is real or not. And I look through my things and I just go, oh my God, look what's happened. And then you think, no, hang on, let me just go and check that. And you actually check and verify with traditional media to see if Reuters or anybody is breaking that news. And if they're not breaking that news, then you know that's fake. So for me, let's call it the lesser of two evils. The
Yeah,
bias is better than combination.
yeah. I think we live in a stage now where people can be very manipulative on social media, especially with the pics, the videos that they show. A prime example is specifically last year sometime we had this red moon, and a lot of people shared a lot of photographs of it. And one of the colleagues, a fellow autism South advocate, well, actually not the autism South advocate, a disabled activist from Kenya, a very influential figure, sent a beautiful photograph of the moon. That a photo that was taken from Kenya, and I shared that, and one of our futurists in South Africa, Graham Cordington, actually
Yes.
commented on my post and said, "This is not real," And even someone like me, can be very manipulative,
Yeah.
can be manipulated. So it's very interesting.
Yeah. And specifically with with a video with AI has moved so fast and it's become so you just can't tell the difference between that and specifically because we've become not only hypervisual but we are more we watch a lot more moving imagery, so videos, reels, and everything like that, and that can be very very easily manipulated and uh, manipulated very nicely to look real and authentic, and yeah, and it's not.
This was very interesting. Thank you, Dion. Dion, I want to ask you, you've been studying the future now for, for a reasonable time. What has studying the future taught you about being human?
Phew, that's I'm gonna I'm going to overlay because there are parallels. So for the listeners and for the viewers that don't know, so the transition I'm going into now is to be an end of life doula. I qualified about 3 years ago, and now I'm moving into a role as a transition guide. The two disciplines, there's a lot of similarities as well. So as a doula, even before I trained as a doula, I have more Buddhist leanings. So my kind of Buddhist mantra was always respect the transience of life. And I think, to answer your question, what the looking at the future has taught me is exactly that: is respect the transience of life, because things change really quickly, and in the last couple of years, it's changing even faster. So you try and meet the phrases, you meet the velocity of change, or try to meet that. But in the same sense, in terms of life and as a doula and looking at assisting people transition, whether it's mortally or within their careers, is things will change. And the more you dig your heels in to try and kind of anchor your spot, the more futile that's going to be, because something's going to come and wash away those foundations and things will change. And so that's my answer to you, is respect the transience of life, whether as a futurist or as a doula, because things will always change.
Are you optimistic about the future?
I am, if I look at, that's an interesting question. I was going to say I am optimistic. I don't want to leave you on a horrible note, but
No, no, please be
I
honest. Yeah.
sometimes I sometimes just look at the world and I just shake my head. It's just, I don't know how people, got to this. So I'm I'm trying, let's say I'm trying to be optimistic. I am an optimist generally. But the things that I see has, sometimes just it shakes your faith in humanity. But then you always do see the good pockets of that. So you just kind of keep going and pushing out the whole message of just be nice and just be kind, because there's a lot of horrible people and a lot of horrible things going around there. And I think we just need to kind of stop and think. And I think that's the challenge, is because if we stop and think, then I think you get more rational thought. But in the world of AI, in the world of fake news, in the world of disinformation, and just on your phones, life passes you by. So you don't stop and think and question. And we need to keep that within us, is to specifically now kind of stop and question, but also to stop and smell the roses and just be in a physical presence, as well. And just, yeah, put your phone down every now and again.
Yeah. Uh, uh, as someone who's also, look, I do a lot of international autism advocacy. I'm the board president of an organization called ICDL, which is the International Council on Development and Learning, and we use we promote a therapeutic intervention called DR floor time, and floor time is basically how you connect with a neurodivergent or any child. Um, it's basically through play, but it's much more than that. It's all about connection, being present. You don't have to say any words, but just to be present by looking someone in the eye, showing interest. Um, that is the foundations of any relationship, because when you do that, you create trust, and that is key.
It's very strange that you mention that, but maybe not so strange, but that is one of the principal roles of a doula, specifically a death doula, is you meet people where they are, and sometimes your presence is all that's needed. You don't have to say anything, but you give of your presence and you say, I'm here for you and I'm here with you. And sometimes that's all that's needed as well.
Yeah. Tell me, those of us who's not familiar with a deaf doula, what does that responsibility inquire, and what do you basically? I think you mentioned before, but if you can just maybe repeat it in
Sure.
simplest terms for us to do, we
No,
don't
sure.
understand.
So a an end of life companion doula, which is my certification. Sometimes death doulas, the term freaks people out, but a death doula really is a non-medical support system. So death doulas are not medically trained. So you don't deal with the medical side of things, but you are an emotional or spiritual support for that person, who, in most cases, is about to die or transition. But specifically, where I operate is to assist families in dealing with that situation. So it can be It can be very mundane, like just simply if you come in and you give the primary caregiver a break, make a cup of tea, you can help sort out with admin work with that, or you can literally hold the hand of a dying person to make what they call a peace-filled transition when they pass. My role is a little bit different. So the futurist in me, and when I trained, they said that, which is why I prefer the term end of life companion doula. They said, don't forget that end of life doesn't just mean mortal death and dying. It's end of life as you know it, which is why I'm moving in as a transition guide, because it could be having your first child, having a divorce, starting a business, ending a business, moving anywhere in life that there are beginnings and endings is where I assist people to transition.
And it's a very, very, very important work, especially in the times that we live in, where everything is uncertain at the moment. Um, and I want to ask you if you could have any piece of advice, especially for young people trying to navigate in an uncertain world where everything is changing. We mentioned all of this information now when we had this discussion. If you could give one piece of advice for young people in this world navigating their world, what advice would that be?
I think specifically now is if you have the means or try and do it as much as possible, is to travel. So physical travel, not just on your phone, not via Instagram or anything like that, but to travel, to meet people from a different culture, to experience the food from a different culture, to just open your lens about the wider world. And I think for me, I've this is a whole different another podcast. I've been banging this drum for like almost 10 years now about what is that university degree worth now in certain fields. My advice to parents, a lot of parents ask me about what must my child study, and to young people I would say, instead of getting a bachelor's of arts, bachelor of whatever, get a bachelor's of life and go and travel a lot, because I did that as well. I traveled. It taught me to stand on my own 2 feet. It taught me different languages. I can speak a bit of French. It just taught me, it opened my worldview. And I think once that happens, whatever you do as a career, as a job, whatever, will be fundamentally changed if you have that different worldview.
Very interesting. Like they often refer to it as the school of life.
Hmm.
The experience that you have, that you gain, you get so much wisdom. You think practically, you think on your toes, you've got life experience, which the book, of course, education is relevant, but there's so much more components with when it comes to survival. And of course, that builds resilience
Yes.
as well.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I just think, in a world where specifically where a younger generation is losing your EQ and your soft skills, being put into a physical environment which is foreign to you, foreign language, foreign food, foreign whatever, I think it's going to be a double challenge, but I think the rewards will be doubled as well, because you will be able to interact in person with your environment, with different people, yeah, and learn how different societies are, but at the same time how similar humanity can be as well.
Yeah. Dion, I want to ask you one last question, and this is with reference to what I generally ask everyone that's on this podcast is when we end off this conversation, where uh based on my field that I'm currently working, because I'm having discussions with people that are game changers and people that only not only influence my life but are influencing society's life in general. And based on what I study and what I do as a autism advocate and as a person, it's all about supporting the neurodiversity movement within this neurodiverse movement. And as we are celebrating International Autism Awareness and Acceptance Month, I usually ask the guests just to basically reintroduce themselves at the end of this conversation and just basically say the following words: I support neurodiversity. So if you can do that, it will be a major honor.
Sure. Okay, so introduce myself first. Yeah.
Yes.
All right. My name's Dion Chang. I'm a futurist and trend analyst, but I'm also a certified end-of-life doula companion and a transition guide. And I support neurodiversity because I have neurodiversity in my family as well.
Thank you so much, Dion. You made a major impact, and thank you for the work that you do. Thank you for influencing a lot of people's lives, and thank you for making a difference. I really appreciate it, and may your success continue to go forward.
Thank you, Emil. Thanks so much. And yeah, it's a great honor to be chosen for this. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dion. I really appreciate
All
it.
right. Good. Have a good day.
You too.
All right. Cheers.
Thank you, Dion. Thank you.